This is bottle B. Let's take out the felt with tweezer carefully. Some beads may hide in this shock-absorbed felt because of transportation. You can double-check it when you take it out. These are all the materials in bottle B. And this is the preview of this portion result. We have two types of beads combination, A and B. Structure A includes a large blue pearl, a silver-lined bead, and a large bicone bead. The structure B includes a small blue pearl, a frosted bead, and a large bicone bead. Structure A and B alternate to create the inner frame of snowflake with long Embroidery stone of last section. Alright, let's get started. First, thread a big pearl. Pull the thread tightly. Stitch along the edge of the pearl. Make sure the needle goes right through the printed line. Make sure you can't see the hole of pearl up front. And you can use the tweezer to adjust it. Then, we thread another silver-lined bead. Stitch along the edge of the pearl. Pull the thread tightly. Thread the beads again to secure them. Or you can thread two beads together. Then, stitch out at the inner edge of the snowflake. Thread a large bicone bead. Stitch along the edge of the silver-lined bead. Make sure the needle goes through the printed pattern line. If it is not leaned to the right direction, you can use tweezer to adjust the position of this big bead. The bead should be slanted inward. Then we can thread it again to secure. Double-check their alignment by the needle as what I am doing here. The bead must not be crooked. Now, let's do structure B. Thread a small pearl and stitch along the edge of the pearl. Stitch out at the end of the line. Take a frosted bead. Then stitch along the edge of the pearl. It's okay if there is a slight gap between the pearl and the frosted bead. Thread them together again to secure. Where we are stitching out is near the edge of the French bullion wire, just as what we have done for last structure big bicone bead. Stitch it close to the edge of the frosted bead. Make sure where you stitch in is exactly matching the middle line of frosted bead. Thread it again to secure. Now, we have completed both structure A and B. All we have to do is repeat them 3 times. Finally, tie a knot at the back. There you go. This is how it looks when this section is finished. Congratulations! After completing part of bottle B, there will be some leftover silver-lined seed beads. Keep them aside because we will need them later. Open bottle C. Be careful not to drop any beads while taking out the fabric. These are all the materials we need for this section, including silver-lined tube bead, long and short white tube beads, and small white bicone bead. Now let's talk about the overall layout and some important points. First, we will fix these tube beads to form the frame. Then, create petal embellishments using small bicone bead, silver seed bead, and a small bicone bead. Finally, fill all the gaps with delica seed beads. Each petal has the same structure. When we make them, work on each petal individually. It is recommended to reinforce all the tube beads one more time. Try to fill all gaps where you can find from any side angles, such as the bottom of the large bicone bead. This way, the snowflake will look beautiful from the side as well. You can concentrate all the starting and ending knots in the central area, rather than placing them on the outer edges. The area of the white felt fabric outside the French bullion wire should have no stitches because we will eventually trim the outer edges of the wire. If the thread is on the outside, it will be cut and loose beads. Okay, let's get started. First, place a silver-lined tube bead. Try to keep it in the straight line of Nibet rhinestone and as close as possible to rhinestone. Straighten the thread with one hand and insert the needle at the end of the pattern line. After fixing each tube bead, I make 2 stitches in the empty space to secure the thread. Here's a small pattern spot that may not be clear in the video. I'll use tweezers to show you. At this point, bring the needle out and thread a long white tube bead. The long white tube bead should be placed along the edge of French bullion wire. Pull the thread straight to see where the other end of the white tube bead is located, and this will be the position where you need to insert the needle. You can also insert the needle slightly farther from the other end of the long tube bead. The white short tube beads also have a pattern line, indicating the length of the white short tube bead. The needle insert position can be slightly longer than the pattern line. Take out bottle B and we will use the silver-lined seed beads inside. String 3 beads, a small bicone bead, a silver seed bead, and another small bicone bead. Then, insert the needle near the French bullion wire and reinforce it again. You can string all 3 beads together like I did, and then fix the middle silver seed bead separately. Now, let's talk about the filling strategy for delica seed beads. Start by filling the gaps on the outer petals of the snowflake, then fill the gaps under the large bicone beads, gradually moving towards the next petal. Repeat this process from one petal to another. You can change the thread for each petal. Thread a single delica seed bead. These beads are very small and perfect for filling. Pay attention to the different orientation of the beads during filling. This way, when viewed from different angles, they will reflect fine points of light. When the hole is facing up, it's the same. Use tweezers to adjust its position so that its side is facing up. There are no strict requirements for the in and out points of the needle. You can be a bit flexible. Just make sure that each delica bead has a different orientation from the previous one. Try to cover the fabric with delica bead as much as possible. It's also fine if they overlap on each other. I pulled the thread too fast earlier, and now it's stuck. The solution is simple. Use tweezers to hold the bead, straighten the thread, and gently pull it through. When you fix this bead, the tube bead got pushed to the side. In such cases, simply fill another delica bead on the other side of the tube bead. Like this, the position of the silver tube bead will be corrected. You can also symmetrically fill delica beads on both sides of the silver tube bead to ensure the tube bead's position doesn't shift. Alright, now the filling of this petal is complete. Next, we'll start filling the inner petal area where the large bicone bead is located. Fill the left side with one delica bead and the right side with another one. This way, we can avoid the large bicone bead getting displaced during the filling of the delica beads. I think there's a small gap here. We can fill it with another delica bead. This area will be filled soon. Remember to keep the thread untangled. The thread can easily get caught on other materials, so don't make it too long. Next, I'm going to demonstrate the entire process of the outer petals again, highlighting some things that haven't been mentioned before or need further emphasis. Reinforcement of silver tube bead can be done now or later during the filling of delica beads. This time, I won't make 2 stitches in the empty space. As long as the thread holding the tube beads is nice and tight, you can skip it. This spot right here is where the long white tube bead starts. It might not be very clear in the video, but you'll be able to see it clearly on the actual piece. The white tube bead here is loose and wobbly, so I need to sew it again. Here, we have the same combination of small bicone bead, silver seed bead, and small bicone bead. I usually fix the silver seed beads separately to make sure all 3 beads are firmly attached to the fabric. At this point, it might be a bit tricky to pick up the needle, so using tweezers is a fantastic tool. Start filling from the small gaps on the edges and gradually move towards the larger gaps in the center. We aim to fill all the gaps as much as possible. Here, I've changed the thread, and when starting again, don't stitch right along the edge of the French bullion wire. Instead, start from the middle of the petal, make 2 stitches in the empty space to secure the knot, and then continue with the embroidery. This time, when filling the side with the silver tube bead, there was no displacement. So, you don't need to alternate between filling the left and right sides like I did in the previous petal. I've shown you both possibilities. So far, I've finished embroidering 2 petals. The next 4 petals will involve repeating the same steps. All we need to do is repeat the process 4 more times, and the petal of snowflake will be complete. Congratulations! The main part of the snowflake is now finished. Okay, we are ready to dismantle the embroidery hoop and proceed with the baseboard preparation. First, take these scissors provided. These scissors make it easy to cut through the felt fabric. I will use both these scissors and regular scissors. Start by using the regular scissors to cut out the snowflake. Then, use these scissors to trim away the excess felt fabric along the edge of the French bullion wire. Be careful not to cut the French bullion wire while trimming the fabric. Trim all the pointed edges of the petals to make them flat. This will make it easier for us to finish the edges. Also, trim the pointed edges in places like this. You will trim the pointed edges of the inner petals as well. Check if any beads are loose. If there are, you can fix them now because it will be harder to do so after attaching the baseboard. Take out the double-sided tape. The shape may vary depending on the batch, so you might receive either circular or square pieces. Peel off one side of the tape and stick the pre-cut frosted plastic sheet onto the adhesive. Then, use the scissors to trim away the excess tape along the edges. You don't need to be extremely precise at this step. An approximate trim will do. If you have worked with bead embroidery before, you might be more familiar with using glue, such as E6000. However, I prefer using double-sided tape. The purpose of this adhesive step is to facilitate the edging process, so it doesn't need to be firmly fixed. Using double-sided tape has several advantages. You don't have to wait for the glue to dry, and you don't need to buy a tube of glue that you might only use once and then discard. Another benefit is that if you find that beads have fallen off later on and need to be repaired, you can easily remove the PU leather and restitch. But if you use glue, it would be harder to remedy the situation. After trimming, peel off the other side of the tape and stick it onto the back of the fabric, aligning it carefully. Once the plastic sheet is attached, it should be slightly smaller than the entire snowflake. You can gently press it to ensure better adhesion.